Ankan Ma'at. It is wonderful to see you. Let me say that I am honored that you've chosen to spend a portion of this amazing Sunday, an important Sunday, with us here at the Shrine of Ma'at for Kemetic Ascension. My name is Jabari El-Saze, also known as Heru Jedid Ma'at Anten Ra, and I'm here on the day that we have celebrated not just fathers, but now we will be celebrating really all throughout the country the celebration known as Juneteenth. And so I know that there's so many other things that you could be doing. I know that you should either be celebrated as a father or be celebrating with your a father figure, and you're still here. So let me welcome you and thank you for spending part of your Sunday. We're going to try to move quickly. Can we say it that way? Does that make sense? Whenever I say that, I end up messing up. Anika's even laughing at me. Let me go ahead and welcome you all and ask you to do as you normally do, to tell us how long you've been part of Kemetic Ascension, how long you've been partaking in Kemetic Ascension, and also tell us where in the world you are. We want to know how far and wide our voices are reaching, how far and wide we are able to reach you, rememberers of the ancient African traditions. So please tell us, one, how long you've been part of Kemetic Ascension, and two, where in the world you are. We're hoping that we'll be able to reach large numbers of people all throughout the world. And as I say that and you're typing, if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like. Come on, let us know that you like this so it's easier to find. And if you're on Facebook, share this. You can share it on your personal page, share it on other pages so other folks are able to come in. And please remember that there are always stars and other ways that you can support what you're seeing. So do we have answers?
Yes, we do. Sinette Cortia is
Ma'at, Sinette Cortia, one of our full members. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
who just completed last week.
Yes, who is she's one of our full members because, and I wanted to show some pictures of those folks from last week, and I did not remember to put them in the presentation. There's so much else going on. I think that in our next Kemetic Ascension, we're going to show you wonderful pictures of our new full members, those folks who have named themselves Shemsu Heru. So we have the Hemsenu, we have Keperu Ra Ma'at. Actually, Keperu Ra Ma'at was after Rakas Hashem. So we have Rakas Hashem, then Keperu Ra Ma'at, and now the Shemsu Heru. And so these four groups, four groups, yeah. These four groups actually have found themselves to be full members of the Shrine of Ma'at. They've done all the work, and we want to salute them. That means that we've run initiation now 5 times because we did the Hemsenu in 2 halves. Did you realize that we've had 5 initiatory cycles?
Yeah.
Okay. When you stop and think about it, it is amazing. It takes a lot of work to do initiation. Those of you who have been fully initiated know this. I'm sure there's someone that's also going to say, I want to be initiated. Yeah, the application will be out later this year. So, Anika, we had Sinette Cortia,
Yes,
who is coming, I believe, from Atlanta, or at least Atlanta area.
There's Sen Derek Grant.
Wonderful.
Happy Juneteenth and Father's Day.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Heru Asar Amun-Ra from Dallas, Texas.
Texas is always in the house. Don't forget to tell us how long you've been part of this as well, folks.
We have Nika Hoskins, also known as Asaru Kid.
Welcome, welcome.
Bonolo Ignatius Maluleke. I hope I said that correctly. Tell us where you're from.
Tell us where you're from, folks.
Sen Cleo is here.
Sen Cleo, how are you, dear brother? One of the members of the Hemsenu. No, Sen Cleo is Keperu, Rakasashen, I believe. Rakasashen. Rakasashen.
You already
Correct
said
me
it.
if I'm wrong if you're not in Rakasashen. For those of you who don't know, each of the initiatory groups, other than the Hemsanu, they name themselves. And so that group has a name. And so we've gotten to the point where we're now trying to remember. I guess we've been doing this for a while now, Anika, that we are actually at the point where we're trying to remember which group. Yeah, that's a big deal.
We have Shane the Watcher, who's been with us since 2016. out in Sacramento,
Wonderful,
California.
wonderful. I've heard that name. Ankh and Ma'at to you, Brother Shane.
Yeah, my auntie Hopi Tehut Patah out in Florida with us for a year.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. Wonderful.
Jeanette Cortez says Atlanta in the house.
Yes, I remember she's from Atlanta. I saw her in Atlanta, and of course now I've seen her in New York too. But I saw her in Atlanta when we did our tour of the Carlos Museum, which we should do again shortly.
We have Sen and Jenna Khan Malo.
Out of Florida. What part
Naples.
of Florida again? Naples, Florida. Ankh and Ma'at, Sen and Jenna Khan. Ankh and Ma'at.
We have Latanya Duncan. Tell us where you're from. We have Cherise Clement from Cleveland.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at.
There's Sen Atan Amun-Ra, watching from Chicago for 3 years.
That's right, in Chicago, Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. Ankh and Ma'at to you and your wonderful children and your mate.
We have Amun-Ra Hotep Ma'at Ankh out in Cape Verde.
These names, they have taken some powerful names. I hope y'all living into those names. Those some powerful Kemetic names, y'all. Cape Verde, wow. From Cape Verde, but watching from where?
From Cape Verde.
In Cape Verde, you're in Cape Verde right now? I'd love to know that. Right off the coast of the continent of Africa.
We have Sen Jason in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Sen Jason, Lincoln, Nebraska, my fellow history buff. It was great to see you last week. Yeah, we spent a lot of time over the last few years in classes and everything, so I feel like I know him so well. But last week was the first time I'd ever seen him, so that was wonderful. Ankh and Ma'at to you, Sen Jason.
Yes, Sen Gavin.
And we'll be talking to you. He sent a text again, trying to initiate. This week was busy as well, trying to initiate the process of receiving a name. So we'll talk with him about that as well.
There's several people who've asked.
Yes.
Yes. To figure out this process. It's a lot of people.
We're going to be setting up a schedule is what we're going to do. And then we're going to let people know. We're talking about people who are full members of the shrine. If you're not a full member of the shrine, you can request a Kemetic name, but that process is a lot more difficult. Okay. We are going to be doing that for full members of the shrine.
Sanette Andrea Watkins, tell us where you're from.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at.
Sanette Siva Ka out in DMV.
Ankh and Ma'at, Sanette Siva Ka. One of our full members.
Yes. We have Tracy Doyen, who's been with us for 3 years from Kenya.
I remember that name. Yes, Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at to Kenya. I think that might be the furthest bit away.
Or is it Cape Verde?
It might be Cape Verde.
Yeah.
Because Cape Verde is on the west coast of the continent, right? You know, this is a good query to have. What or where, which one is closer? That's fun. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm doing a Google search. Let's see. We have Shanti Bethel from Louisville, Kentucky.
Ankh and Ma'at, Louisville, Kentucky.
Completely new. Welcome.
Welcome to Kemetic Ascension. Hopefully someone has brought you here. Folks, remember, this is a really good time for you to like up the video and to share it. You know people that should be with us here. And so I'm really hoping that you are also joining us and we'll let others know that they should be here as well.
Yeah, so Cape Verde is on the west.
It is on the west.
Kenya is further.
I know it's on the west. The question is, what's the distance? Like, if you were going to fly, which one's further? That's the question. Are you questioning my geographical skills? That's what she said. She said Cape Verde is in the west. Like she wasn't sure what I was saying. Wow. Yes, but here's the deal though. When you take a flight, a straight flight from New York to Ghana. Is that flight, a straight flight is shorter though, isn't it? Than the flight to Kemet?
Yeah.
So then we should assume that Cape Verde is closer and that Kenya is further. That's the first thing I said.
And I confirmed that.
Oh wow. You see the blood in the streets of Harlem right now? Do you see that? Wow. She said, and I confirmed it. Wow. Just straight violence. My goodness. That was harsh.
Oh, wow.
That was harsh.
That's the net Yashuria. Sakina Rao.
Ankin Ma'at, Sinette, another full member. For full members, you should know we're going to try to we have a shrine meeting tomorrow, don't we? Look at Nika's face. She's like, do we really? We're so tired.
But that and solstice.
Yeah, because we also have the solstice celebration on Tuesday. There's a lot going on. There is a lot going on, a whole lot going on. So, I tell this to people sometimes. I have worked for other people, and when I was not at work, I was Jabari, but I wasn't at work, right? Right? When I was at the Urban League and I was a vice president of programs, when I came home, I was just Jabari. When you are a Kemetic priest, you are always a Kemetic priest. When I'm sleeping, I'm a Kemetic priest. When I wake up, a Kemetic priest. There is always so much to do. That's just the reality. There is always so much to do. Look at Anika shaking her head because she's tired too. There's always so much to do. So definitely this week we'll also be busy with shrine activities and events as well. So.
My Auntie Otipi says, my Auntie Hopi says that the ceremony was lovely.
Wonderful. Ankan Ma'at and Dwa to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
There's Sinette Adenike out in the Gambia.
Ankan Ma'at, dear Adenike, who is coming to us from the continent as well. One of our full members, Rakasa Shen, I believe. I think I got that one right. She's Rakasa Shen. Wonderful. Ankan Ma'at to you.
We have Pro McKeever. Tell us where you're from. Sinette Sandra Arrington, representing the BK.
Ankan Ma'at, Sinette Sandra Arrington, who has taken classes. Is she a full member? We have more than one Sandra. Sinette Sandra, did you actually complete initiation? You've also been someone that's been with us for a long time. I should remember. I know she's been in classes, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember anyway, go ahead. Anika's like, why are you announcing it if you're not sure? Yes,
I know. Son Derek Grant says he's with us for 5 years from Columbus, Ohio.
Wonderful. Ankan Ma'at to you.
And let's see.
I think Senator Arrington is a full member. Yeah, I remember typing that name.
Let's see, who else do we have?
You should see the motion she's making. I don't even know what all of them mean, but they are interesting. One of these days, I'm going to just put a camera right here. She's not going to know it, so you can see what I'm seeing. Because you just see me most of Kemetic Ascension these days. You should see what I'm seeing. Go ahead.
Interesting. So Dwight Carter asked if we could explain the Juneteenth holiday.
We're going to talk about Juneteenth today. We'll talk about Juneteenth today, absolutely. Yeah. And Ankan Ma'at to you.
Oh, it's Send Tuhuti Forever.
Send Tuhuti Forever, the Jati of Phoenix, of that great city, that Benue city in Arizona. Ankan Ma'at to you. Yes, he's Rakasa Shen in the house.
We have Sen Atum Davian. Good to see you.
Ankan Ma'at, a name that we've heard before.
Yes, he's a musician.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That also sent us some pieces, right?
Yes. It's the Shy now living in Sunshine, Florida.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
We have Lynn Ubuntu. Oh, okay. It's Sinette Fafanta.
Ankan Ma'at. Sinette Fafanta, one of our full members.
Sinette Newt, how are you?
Sinette Newt, repping Boston.
I feel like I dreamt about her last night. Very interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. We just saw her last week as well. Ankan Ma'at to you.
Gianu Spring out in St. Lucie.
Another St.
Port
Lucie.
Port St. Lucie.
Oh, Port St. Lucie.
Mhm.
Oh, that's Florida. That's Florida. Yeah.
And I know it's
Isn't that where that's where the Mets have their? I'm a Mets fan. That's where the Mets have their home.
so that Sandra says, yes, I am a full member.
That's right. She's a full member. You see, we have more than one Sandra, and this one Sandra has only taken classes that has not become a member. But I remember you. I remember sending you your materials. Anka Ma'at to you, Sanette. See?
Send M.
I didn't want to just say Anka Ma'at and not recognize that she's a full member. Anika's looking at me and saying, you should remember. I should. Jabari's addled brain has not gotten a lot of sleep. So whenever I'm standing in Kemetic Ascension, I have gotten very little sleep. This Kemetic Ascension, I've gotten more sleep than the last like 3, but it still was only like 5-6 hours. So, but the day before, I must have gotten 2 or 3 hours sleep. It's rough. It's rough. Who else?
Send M.
Ankan Ma'at, who is a full member and has traveled with us to Kemet as well.
He's the one who started the whole trend of bling for the initiates and the
bling. Yeah, but he's the swag. You mean swag? Yes, the swag. Right. Yeah, yeah. I think he was the first one that said that he wanted to make some shirts for Rakas Hashem.
And now it's
every single initiatory group has their
and journals and jewelry and all kinds of swag.
Yeah. Yeah, we see journals and mugs and all kinds of stuff. They come prepared. Each group comes prepared. That's right. And we should also be rocking Shrine of Ma'at swag as well. We have that as well, right?
Yes, on our website.
Yep.
We have Asim Potager in Trinidad.
Yes, I recognize that name too. Ankan Ma'at to you. Was he in a class with us? Either that or we've been talking we talked via email some time ago. I do remember that name.
Joyous Cells out in Tyler, Texas.
Ankan Ma'at to you.
The Lucian Knopfsinger. Where are you from? Let us know.
Ankan Ma'at. I'm getting text from Ken Glover, by the way.
Wow.
Saying happy Juneteenth to me. Ken Glover, in some ways, is another father figure of ours, even though if he heard me saying that, he would say, what? He's like an older brother of ours. Really acted as a Jegna when we were at Cornell. So, yeah.
Let's see. We have, who else we have? We have questions. Is it Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at? Which one is it?
Good question. Now, let me say to you that most of the Kemetic communities, at least on the East, not just on the East Coast, but a lot of Kemetic communities have gone to use the phrase Ankh N or Ankh M Ma'at. And it began in usage because our shrine elder, we used to just say Hetep or Hetepu, right? And he said that we should remind ourselves that we must live in balance, right? So that's why I say Ankh En Ma'at, right? There are some that say Ankh Em Ma'at. And I went to Baba and said, Baba, which one is it? And guess what he said? He said, does it matter, beloved? You can say Ankh En Ma'at or Ankh Em Ma'at. That you have a life of balance or you have a life in balance. So you'll hear some say Ankh En Ma'at and some say Ankh Em Ma'at. In fact, I think that the folks in our sister shrine, the Temple of Anu, they may more say Ankh Em Ma'at, E-M. And we probably, because Anika and I say Ankh En Ma'at, right?
I say both.
You say both? She says both, just to make it more challenging for the answer. Just know it's not Ankh and Ma'at, like A-N-D. No, it's Ankh. You can say Ankh En Ma'at or Ankh Em Ma'at. Good question.
Let's see. Oh, so Crow McIver says they're from Salisbury, North Carolina.
Ankh and Ma'at to you, Ankh and Ma'at.
Umeme J. I remember that name. Haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back.
Ankh and Ma'at to you.
I think that's everyone.
That is wonderful. Wonderful. Let me say Ankh and Ma'at to you all. let me say that hopefully that greeting will remind you that you must live your life in balance. I want to greet you all. I want to say that I'm so pleased that you're here. You know, did that camera just do something different? This is the new camera we're using. It turned blue and then green.
Nothing changed here.
Wow.
She do have Sinette Shankar who snuck in here.
Ah, Uncle Ma'at Sanet Shenka.
Oh, so that Sandra says that you're not going crazy. It might be because she uses two different names. She uses her married name, Arrington, but her name is also Fagan.
Yes.
And
Yes.
registered for classes under
Yes. That's where some of the confusion. Yes. I knew that there was something out there, but I remember when we sent you your initiatory materials, I sent it to Sandra Arrington. So when I asked the question, I remember I literally saw myself putting the label. Yes, I'm the one that does that sometimes. Putting the label on your package, and that's why I said no. She's a full member. So Ankin Ma'at to you. It's good to know that you're out there and still repping the Shrine of Ma'at, still doing things within the Shrine of Ma'at. We have a shrine meeting tomorrow. Yes, I know it's Juneteenth, the federal holiday of Juneteenth, but we do have a shrine meeting. I don't know if we'll get Anika on because she has some other stuff to do. That's why she's looking like that. But I'll be on. And for those of you who are not full members of the shrine, those meetings are just for members of the shrine. But we welcome you to so many of the other things that we do. Ankin Ma'at to you all.
More people stuck in says Brother Pimpanzi is here.
Brother Pimpanzi out of, I think he's in North Philly. I know he's in Philly, but I think it's North Philly. And also Shenka is in the DMV area. I always say to Anika, she's so small, but she's so big. When she enters the room, you know she's there, but she's so small. We have so much myrrh for her and all the work that she's doing, and very active member of the Shrine of Ma'at.
Sen Rich and Sinette Rael.
Sen Rich is just a few miles from here. I think he's coming out of Queens. Ankin Ma'at, one of our our full members, and to Sinette Rael, Ankin Ma'at to you, coming out of St. Louis. I think she's still in St. Louis. Yeah, I think she's still in St. Louis. I know that that's where they're from. She and her dear sister, who are both members of the Shrine of Ma'at. And it was wonderful to see them and to have time, spend time with them almost 2 weekends in a row. I think there was a weekend in between, but we saw them in Chicago. They came out to Chicago. We had fun. And then we had lots of fun with them also last weekend for their closing initiatory weekend, the OPET Festival weekend.
Now, Sinette Coach E. Bryan came in from Detroit.
Detroit. Coach Ye, Sinette Coach Ye, one of our full members. By the way, some of you were unable to come to the ceremony. You should be receiving your pendant shortly because we recognize that you've completed your process, and hopefully we will see you at one of the things that's going on this week online. Is that everyone? Ankin Ma'at, that's a lot of people. Anika sat back in her chair like she was taking a quick break. That's not going to work. She's not on a break. Let me say Ankin Ma'at to you all. It is amazing that we have you here for Kemetic Ascension. We know there's so much going on today. And so we are really honored that you've chosen to spend part of your day here with us. We know that today is Father's Day. We know that today is Juneteenth. There's a lot going on. And today I'm going to try to make a connection between both of those holidays. Stay tuned. So as we begin, I want us to remember that before we do anything of importance, we should open with the opening of the way. So please stand and get into the position of adoration. That means you're going to stand upright and you're going to take just a small stride forward with your left foot so that you're standing with your left foot forward. And then you're going to expose your palms in front of you. I want you to do this at some time today. Close your eyes and just simply stand in this manner with your palms in front of you and see if you can sense some of the energy that is in the room. This is one of the ways that you can sense energy. So as you do this, we want you to stand this way, but put the left hand a bit further forward. You can pull the right hand a little further back, and you can also have the left hand be a little bit higher than the right hand. So as we begin, you know that you should be taking your deep breath before we chant the word for everlasting divine life. Ankh. Try to take the breath from your abdomen. Don't breathe from here. That's how we learn to breathe when we live life in urgency, when we live life in challenge, that we breathe from here. Breathe from down here and fill your torso as much as you can. And when you chant Ankh, don't say Ankh. Some people do that where they're just breathing from here. We want you to do it, have a nasal sound, like a nasal sound, so that it's at the top of your head. Okay, let's go. Take your breath.
Anetrak in Bethet.
Anetrak in Bethet.
Nuke in Bethet.
Nuke in Bethet. Anetrak Hapi.
Anetrak Hapi.
Nuke Hapi.
Nuke Hapi.
12 winter.
12 winter.
Let's turn to the right.
Anetrak Serket.
Anetrak Serket.
Nuke Serket.
Nuke Serket. Anetrak Kebsenu.
Anetrak Kebsenu.
Nuke Kebsenu.
Nuke Kebsenu.
12 winter.
12 winter. Anetrak As.
Anetrak As.
Nuke As.
Nuke Ast. Anetrak Amset.
Anetrak Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Nuke Amset.
12 winter.
12 winter. Anetrak Neat.
Anetrak Neat.
Nuke Neat.
Nuke Neat. Anetrak Dwamutef.
Anetrak Dwamutef.
Nuke Dwamutef.
Nuke Dwamutef.
12 winter.
12 winter. Anetrak Newt.
Anetrak Newt.
Nuke Newt.
Nuke Newt. Anetrak Geb.
Anetrak Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Nuke Geb.
12 winter.
12 winter.
Anetrak Shu.
Anetrak Shu.
Shu. Shu. Shu. Shu. Nuke Shu.
Anetrak Tefnut.
Anetrak Tefnut. Tefnut.
Tefnut.
Tefnut. Tefnut. Tefnut.
Tefnut.
Nuke Tefnut. 12 winter. Anetrak Paut in Teru. Nuke Paut in Teru. Anetrak Boo in Teru. Nuke and Boo in Teru. 12 winter. Winter. You should know we messed up because we're using a new camera. The camera is not just blinking at us, but it's moving. Did you notice that it shifted this way and it shifted back? I did not know that camera was going to do that. Did you?
I wasn't looking at it.
You just noticing. I was like, wait, why did the camera just move?
I was like, what are you doing?
It moved. I think that when we come, it's probably following us. Wait, let's see. It follows. You see that? That's what it's doing.
You haven't gotten much sleep.
I didn't expect it to do that.
You're cracking me up today.
Oh my goodness. I have not gotten enough sleep. But see, as you walked away, it moved back. It moved towards the TV. It did.
Okay.
It did. Come back this way, camera. Come on now. So it's blinking and it's moving. This is the first Kemetic Ascension that we're using this camera. We're hoping that the resolution is a little bit better. I don't know if it is. Anika says it looks relatively the same.
It's brighter.
It's brighter?
Okay.
Yeah, so we're hoping that this is a better camera for us to use. We'd like to be able to clip some of these. Sometimes when we're talking about important topics, we really do believe that our camera should have a higher acuity so that we're able to see you better, right? So that's what we're trying to do. You're able to see us better is what I meant. Okay, so at this point, what do? We usually go into Hesi. And you should know that Hesi, usually spelled H-E-S-Y or H-E-S-I, is how our Kemetic ancestors really galvanize divine energy in affirmation, in harmony, and in song. Think of Hesi as ancient African gospel. You see how Black folks have brought gospel music to the world in excellence. The reason why we have done that is because we have been doing Hesse perhaps for tens of thousands of years. At least we see that term used for thousands of years. And so when we came into our current traditions, we approached it with the sensibilities that we had in our older, more ancient traditions. And so that's what occurred.
I guess
So-
we came in just in time for that.
Who just came in just in time for the Hesse?
That wonderful couple out in Ghana.
That wonderful couple out in Ghana, the Schaefers. Anken ma'at to you all. And happy Father's Day as well to you. And so Anika is going to actually play one of the Hesse that they mastered, and I don't know which one she's playing. It might be one of the ones that they wrote themselves. It's one that we wrote.
Mhm.
Yeah. Nuku Ruku Amiku Kaman Keparu. Well, that's not. We didn't really write it.
Baba
It comes from the Pertemaru. Right.
Baba extracted it as one of the
Right,
prayers.
and Baba Heru, Ankh Ra Samad Se
And then we
Pata,
made it
our
Hesse.
elder, is the one that started singing it. It comes from the root, from the Reyu Pertem Ruangere.
Mhm.
What does that mean? We are singing words that our ancestors have spoken and perhaps even sung for thousands of years. Just think of it this way. Just think of it this way. That passage was probably in the Pertem Heru, probably, let's say, and I'm going to just throw this date out without checking it, maybe around 1600 BCE. So just imagine that for over, let's say, over 1500 years, our ancestors were using that phrase. Just think about what that means. Just think about how powerful that is. So I truly hope that you will enjoy this Hesse. It comes from the Reyu Partin Ruangere, and we believe that it is quite wonderful. It was wonderfully performed and mastered by that couple out in Dodowa, Ghana that we enjoy so much, the Schaefers. So, without any further ado, this is the Rupu Nuku Amiku Hesse.
Rupu Nuku Amiku Kemam Keperu in Interhayu Uncle Jasane. Rupu Nuku Amiku Kemam Keperu in Interhayu Uncle Jasane. I am a shiny, shining being, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. I am a shiny, shining being, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. Rupu Nuku Amiku Kemam Keperu in Interhayu Uncle Jasane. Rupu Nuku Amiku Kemam Keperu in Interhayu Uncle Jasane. I am a shiny, shining being, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. I am a shiny, shining being, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. Rupu Nuku Amiku Kemam Keperu in Interhayu Uncle Jasane. Rupu Nuku Amiku Kemam Keperu in Interhayu Uncle Jasane. I am a shiny, shining being, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. I am a shiny, shining being, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. Rupu nuku amiku kemam keperu and enter hayu Uncle Jasane. Rupu nuku amiku kemam keperu and enter hayu Uncle Jasane. I am a shiny, shiny bee, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. I am a shiny, shiny bee, dwelling in the light, created from the limbs of divinity. Rupu nuku amiku kemam keperu, and enter hayu Uncle Jasane. Rupu nuku amiku kemam keperu, and enter hayu Uncle Jasane. 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 Uncle Jasane.
Ankh and Ma'at, and Dwa to our wonderful shrine members out in Ghana. I hear it's raining extensively there. I wonder if you're having lots of rains. Please let us know how you're doing, by the way. We just got some text this weekend saying that there was massive rain. There were massive rains in the area that we are in. The one area that we have a home in, I guess. Is that the best way to describe it? The area that we're installed in as well. There are massive rains there. So please let us know how you're doing.
There's a question in terms of how to access
Yes.
the music. So this is a CD that can be purchased, but it's also streaming on most major platforms. So if you're on iTunes or Apple
iTunes,
Music,
I think it's even on iHeartRadio, it's on Spotify. We've had some Pandora, Deezer, yeah. Virtually all of the ways that you stream music. If you look for if you look for Temple Music Volume 1, Kemetic Meditations, my inclination is to switch all those words around. So I had to pause for a second because I am tired. But basically, if you search for it, you'll find it. You'll definitely find it, and that means that you'll be able to listen to it streaming. That means you can listen to it in your car. It means that whenever you're doing what you're doing when you're streaming. I know so many people are on Spotify, for example. I believe it's also on Tidal, right? You'll also be able to stream it there. So please listen to it if you'd like to hear this wonderful music that the shrine has brought into modern usage. So, dua once again to the Schaefer's, brother Sen Charles and Sinette Kenya. Okay, so today, what I'd like to do, and I told you I wasn't going to keep you long, let's see if I can do that. For the word from the Seba'it, is I'd like to talk to you about all of these things going on right now. I mean, all of these holidays, all these important days, these days that we should recognize as people of African descent, and as we are practitioners of the Kemetic tradition, know that these are important dates. This week is really important. And so I want to talk about all of that, but you also know I'm going to mix in some of the words from that ancient body of literature known as Seba'it literature. Seba'it literature, the term Seba'it has been translated something like wisdom. So it's almost like us saying that this is the wisdom literature of ancient Kemet. And the wisdom literature of ancient Kemet is the oldest body of literature in the world. In fact, the oldest complete book, the Maxims of Ptah-hotep, is in many ways you can consider it the earliest or one of the earliest manifestations, Wu manifestations of this literature. On the screen, you are seeing the image of Ptah-hotep to your left. this man that writes the world's oldest book at the age of 110. And then in the middle, you see enslaved Africans in celebration because they are no longer enslaved. And of course, we see on the right these determined formerly enslaved men who fought for our freedom during the Civil War. So I want you to take a look at this and recognize the deeper meaning of this image. So the question we should have is, what are all the things that we should be thinking about this week? What are all of those things that we should be celebrating, meditating upon, perhaps even doing our altar work, restoring Ma'at to? First, you know that Tuesday is the summer equinox. That means that the Shrine of Ma'at will be celebrating this movement of the sun from our perspective on the earth on Tuesday at 7 p.m. We will be at the Tekken in Central Park. So those of you who are in New York City or around New York City know that we will be there. So that is of importance to us. It's one of those times in the year that the sun actually gives us equinox, meaning equal night, nox meaning night, equi coming from the same base that we get the word equal from. Know that this means that we're going to get roughly the same hours of day that we will of night. It's roughly the same hours of light that we will of darkness. And so this, in some ways, is a wonderful metaphor for our philosophical drive of Ma'at. And so we will be celebrating on Tuesday at 7 p.m. And then, of course, we have Father's Day. How can we forget that day that recognizes fathers, that recognizes the men in our lives, the men in our thinking, the men in our traditions that have guided us to where we are? This is an important day, particularly because as a person of African descent, we must recognize that our families have been under attack for such a long period of time. And particularly when we look at the men in our lives, we should recognize that Black men, that men of African descent, particularly in the West, have been under attack. They have been the most ardent target of white supremacist violence. And that has made the reality of being a father or being a jegna, being a guide to those who are with you, even more challenging. And I know that on Father's Day today, I must think of my father, Winfred Levy Jacobs, who was such an important part of every moment of my life when he was in physical form. And I know that he is still with me in spiritual form. That has been a really difficult thing for me. He's actually been in an ancestral realm for about 2 years now, and it was difficult losing him. So I think of him even more today, and I'll pour libation to him today. I'll meditate to him today. I'll do altar work to him today. So Father's Day is important. Celebrate those men who have allowed you to be who you are. Celebrate them today. And that doesn't mean you're just celebrating those men that are still in physical form. Make sure that you are giving love to those men who are ancestors who have done that for you as well. And then we have that holiday that some people are trying to say is a new holiday. How dare they? Juneteenth has been celebrated for over 100 years. It is now a federal holiday. It's a new federal holiday, but it is certainly not a new holiday. When I hear that in the media, I say to myself once again, they are ignoring the traditions of people of African descent while pretending to talk about them. We have celebrated Juneteenth for such a long period of time. So let's talk about all of these today. Let's talk a bit about all of these today as we get to a better understanding of where we should be on this particular day. And of course, We have a new camera, but we still need a new laptop. You saw me move this just a moment ago. Now, of course, our laptop is not cooperating. See if I can wake it up. Well, you should know that last year, I believe it was last year, this day of great importance was made a federal holiday. This day that we now know as Juneteenth. And you should know that Juneteenth is a portmanteau of June 19th. A portmanteau is when you take two words and you put them together, right? Just like you've heard in politics, they talked about Brexit when Britain was leaving the European Union. They called it Brexit, Britain exit, British exit. You've heard of Botox, right? Those things that folks use to remove lines in their face. It comes from botulinum toxin, so they made it Botox. These were ampersand is another one that's a portmanteau. These words that are taken, two separate words or two separate terms are put together as one. It's called a portmanteau. So Juneteenth is a portmanteau of June 19th because the date we are celebrating is June 19th. And I'm going to say to you that while this day has been celebrated by people of African descent for an extended period, one person, perhaps more than others, toiled to have it be a federal holiday. If you look at this image, you're going to see several members of Congress. I see James Clyburn there. I see who is in the House of Representatives. To his right, I see Raphael Warnock, who is a senator from Atlanta. I see so many important people in this image. The vice president is there. People who have been representing Black folks for a long time. In fact, I'm going to say that the Black folks we see on the screen have been people that have been fighting for Black folks. Sometimes we say that our politicians are doing nothing. I challenge you when you say that, because when you look at the Black folks on these screens, they have fought for us for a long time, including Raphael Warnock, who has just been in the Senate for 2 years. He continues to fight for Black folks. And so these are really important people. The sister all the way to the left there, she was a Black Panther. Did you know that? What is her name? The sister who is helping the elder there, she is to her left in this image. She was a Black Panther and is now a part of the House of Representatives. What is her name? Here's the fundamentally important question I'm going to ask to you. What is the name of the nonagenarian? Yes, she is over 90 years old. She looks really good, Black don't crack, who is being helped by Vice President Kamala Harris to the signing of the proclamation of the bill, of the law that creates Juneteenth as a federal holiday. You see her here? Her head is down and she's wearing glasses. What is her name? What is her name? Do we have any answers to the first question, Anika? No? Y'all gonna have to do some homework. What is the name of that politician that was a Black Panther that you're seeing there? What is her name? I want you to put that up on our Facebook page, because I'm not telling you. You should know who she is. You should know who she is. And what is the name of this elder? Now here's a better picture of her. Does anyone know? Some people call her Grandma Juneteenth. Did you know that? Did you know that for her work, she is known as Grandma Juneteenth? We need to remember these folks who are doing this important work in our community. Well, I'm going to tell you her name. Her name
was Elaine Brown.
Elaine Brown? For what? Did she just put Elaine Brown? Elaine Brown
Son Jason wrote Elaine Brown.
as the he's talking about the politician. Yes, you're correct. Good. And this person, her name is Opal Lee. And as I've said, she is Grandma Juneteenth. Let's listen to a discussion of some of the work that she's done, as brought to us on ABC News. Take a listen.
Finally Tonight, America Strong, the grandmother of Juneteenth. Tonight, Americans across the country honoring Juneteenth. Volunteers planting flowers in Pittsburgh. Students gathering at the Capitol in Madison, Wisconsin. Juneteenth is the first federal holiday to be named since Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 1983, and it remembers Freedom Day for American slaves, when federal troops set free the last remaining slaves in America in Galveston, Texas, who had no idea they had been freed years before. And one of the Americans fighting for decades for this recognition, 94-year-old Opal Lee from Fort Worth, Texas. Her home was set on fire by white rioters on Juneteenth, 1939. And so for years now, Opal Lee has been walking 2.5 miles on Juneteenth, raising awareness for the 2.5 years it took for news of freedom to reach all the slaves. Speaking before lawmakers, petitioning Congress, delivering more than 1.5 million signatures to make it a holiday, even walking an astonishing 1,400 miles from her home in Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. for 4 months to plead her case.
I'm really a little old lady in tennis shoes getting in everybody else's business, and I'm having a good time doing it too.
And this week, President Biden signed Juneteenth into law. Opal Lee was right there. Kamala Harris, the first Black vice president, holding her hand. The president inviting her to the White House, kneeling before her.
She's made it her mission to see that this day came, to make this day possible.
Tonight, Opal Lee and her message.
I just know that the time has come for us to work together.
Sure has. An amazing woman. And be sure to watch tonight, Juneteenth, Together We Triumph, a Soul of a Nation special event. It airs tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern here on ABC. I'm Wade Johnson in New York. Have a great night.
I really think that it is wonderful when we see that elders like this one, she was 90 plus years old. She is now 95, actually have been fighting for these things that represent the challenges, the successes, the toilings of people of African descent in the United States. And I cannot imagine walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. We always have a lot of folks in Texas actually on Kemetic Ascension. Can you imagine walking from Texas to Washington, D.C.? Taking 4 months to walk. And I love when she says she's just a little old lady in tennis shoes getting in everybody's business. In other words, she is going to fight so that those elected officials actually represent our interest. Sometimes people think that holidays are unimportant. But I would say holidays are critically important because they give us the opportunity to get into dialogue. And raising awareness is the first thing that we must do in order to change public policy, in order to change behavior, in order to ensure that people like us get the things we deserve and are the people we ought to be, the people that our ancestors mandated we must be. These holidays are important. And I'm even going to say to you, we celebrate so many days that were given to us by our enslavers. It is important to have days that actually represent us. This is important. And so I'm really hoping that you recognize Sister Opal Lee. I hope you recognize how much work she's done. So often we think that there aren't people doing things. And the reason why we believe that is because we are not paying close attention. This woman in her 90s continued to campaign to have this day exist. So this is really important. In fact, you're seeing a clip from a New York Times article that was published 2 years ago. You should actually get this article. Just search for the article. Opal Lee's Juneteenth vision is becoming a reality. It was in the New York Times on June 18th, 2020, and updated in 2021. So understand that it really recognize that in 2020, not 2021, 2020, the president, Joe Biden, signed the bill making Juneteenth a holiday into law. And it speaks to the importance of people of African descent to recognize the journey that we've been on. Just think about how this woman, Opal Lee, when she was 12, had a mob of 500 white supremacists destroy her home, burn her home. And this is just amazing. And Opal Lee says that no arrests were made. There have been so many times that people of African descent have been the victims of domestic terrorism, white evil racism, and there has been no one held account. And that is the reality that so many of us have faced. But she continued to want people to know what had happened to us, to respect what had happened to us, and to celebrate our victory. Because in many ways, Juneteenth is a celebration of victory. So let's talk about what Juneteenth is briefly, and understand it in context. But before we go there, I want to connect Father's Day to Juneteenth. If Juneteenth is a celebration of the battle for freedom that people of African descent wage, the successful battle for freedom, Juneteenth is not a celebration of Abraham Lincoln letting these saddened, benighted Black people go. That is not what Juneteenth is. That is not Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a recognition that people of African descent fought on the continent when we were being forced into enslavement, on the ships when we were being brought to a new land against our will, on plantations where we were forced to toil. And finally, we fought, and we won. In fact, you should know that from the earliest Juneteenth celebrations, there were always regiments of Black soldiers in those marches because we were recognizing that we fought for our freedom and we won. Not that we were given it, but that we took it. So how could one connect Father's Day to Juneteenth? Well, when I think of a father who fought and fought for our freedom, one of the people I think of is a man known as Henry Box Brown. Henry Box Brown. Can you tell us what Henry Box Brown did? For those of you who are familiar with Henry Box Brown, I want you to put in the chat if you know what he did. By the way, you should know that the image on the screen should give you half the story. But why is his story important? Where is Brother Jabari going to go when we connect his story to Father's Day and then to Juneteenth? Do we have an answer? Yes.
Son Jason said he mailed himself to freedom.
Of course, Son Jason would say that because he's a history buff like I am. So yes, where did he mail himself from? I'm gonna make it more difficult. Did he mail himself around the corner? Now, I didn't ask you where he mailed himself to, because if you're looking at the picture, you should know. The question is, where did he start? That's the question I want to know. Where did he start? Let's see if we have some interesting answers. By the way, when you go to that city today, there is a monument for him. There's a statue of him and there's a box there. A box that should be around the size of the box that he used. And I know I've gone there with students and they take pictures in the box. In fact, I have a picture in the box. I crouched into that box to see what it would have been like. Any answers as to where he mailed himself from?
We have Philadelphia, we have Canada.
No, Philadelphia is where he went to.
Virginia is what Son Jason says.
Yes, Son Jason says Virginia. He's a ringer. But I'm not going to take it easy on you, Son Jason. I asked where. I don't want you to give me a whole state. Come on now. Well, let me help out. Son Jason loves history like I do. You should know that he mailed himself from Richmond, Virginia. And when you go to Richmond, Virginia, and take that journey that they call the slave walk sometimes, you actually will note that he actually was on that journey from Richmond, Virginia to Philadelphia. This is how he found his way to freedom. And you should know that the box said, as it says in the picture, this side up, handle with care. The people who were loading the box either could not read, did not read, or did not care. They put it upside down, which meant that for an extended period, he was on his head. And that was really hard. He said that it was so difficult at one point that so much blood had gone to his head that he thought that he would perish. And in this journey, which took, I believe, 2 days, he actually only had a bottle to relieve himself and a piece of bread. This is very difficult. And while we could recognize his celebration, which occurred in Philadelphia, a state that had enslavement at one point. I don't want you to think that Philadelphia was always free, but because the Quakers, who in many ways were very critical to the founding of the state, had abolished enslavement earlier, that meant that this state had been free earlier as well. And so going to Philadelphia meant that you were going up north to a place that had freedom. And that is what he did. So this is really important. But you might ask, what would make someone go on this arduous journey? What would make someone decide that they're going to put themselves in a box and mail themselves, not knowing whether they'd be caught, not knowing whether they'd survive? Very difficult. Now it's humorous. We laugh at the fact that he outsmarted his enslavers. But you should know that there were horrors that led to this. I want you to listen to a portion of his autobiography. Yes, he writes an autobiography that describes how he had his family swindled from him. Think about this on Father's Day. So essentially what he had attempted to do is he spoke to both the person that owned him as an enslaved African and the person that owned his wife. And you should know that when this crude owner realized that he considered this woman to be his wife, he went to her and said, "Is this your husband?" And she had to say no. Imagine the impact that has on a family. That he actually had 3 children with her, and that they were together for 12 years. He goes to this enslaver and says, "Can I purchase my wife and my children?" He agrees. He says he's a Christian. He agrees. And then he swindles him and makes an agreement to sell her and her children further south. This is where that term being sold down the river comes from. It means that you're going to a more arduous place, that you as an enslaved African are going into a place that is even more difficult than the one that you were already in, that you were betrayed. That's where the phrase comes from. And so this is exactly what happened. And he was told that they had been sold, and he describes what happens when he finds that there may be a way for him to see them one last time. Listen to ancestor Henry Box Brown. He says, "My agony was now complete. She with whom I had traveled the journey of life in chains for the space of 12 years, and the dear little pledges God had given us, I could plainly see must now be separated from me forever. I must continue, desolate and alone, to drag my chains through the world. Oh dear, I thought, shall my wife and children no more greet my sight with cheerful looks and happy smiles? For far away in the North Carolina swamps are they henceforth to toil beneath the scorching rays of the hot sun, deprived of a husband's and a father's care. Can I endure such agony? Shall I stay behind while they are driven with the tyrant's rod? I must say, I am a slave, The law of men gives me no power to ameliorate my condition. It shuts up every avenue of hope. But thanks be to God that there is a law of heaven which Senate's laws cannot control. While I was thus musing, I received a message that if I wished to see my wife and children and bear them the last farewell, I could do so by taking my stand on the street where they were all to pass on their way to North Carolina. I quickly availed myself of this information and placed myself by the side of the street, and soon had the melancholy satisfaction of witnessing the approach of a gang of slaves amounting to 350 in number. Can you imagine 350 people being walked down from Virginia to North Carolina? Can you imagine this? Marching under the direction of a Methodist minister. Did you hear what he said? Marching under the direction of a Methodist minister by whom they were purchased, and amongst which slaves were my wife and children. I stood in the midst of many who, like myself, were mourning the loss of friends and relations and had come there to obtain one parting look at those whose company they but a short time before had imagined they should always enjoy, but who were, without any regard to their own wills, now driven by the tyrant's voice and the smart of the whip on their way to another scene of toil, and to them another land of sorrow in a far-off southern country. These beings were marched with ropes around their necks and staples on their arms, and although in that respect the scene was no very novel one to me, in other words, he had seen this many times before, yet the peculiarity of my own circumstances made it assume the appearance of unusual horror. In other words, he knows his wife and children are in there, so this is so much more painful than the scenes he had become familiar with. This train of beings was accompanied by a number of wagons loaded with little children of many different families, which, as they appeared, rent the air with their shrieks and cries and vain endeavors to resist the separation which was thus forced upon them, and the cords with which they were thus bound. But what should I now see in the very foremost wagon but a little child looking towards me and pitifully calling, "Father, Father." This was my eldest child, and I was obliged to look upon it for the last time, that I should perhaps ever see it again in life. If it had been going to the grave and this gloomy procession had been about to return its body to the dust from whence it sprang, whence its soul had taken its departure from the land of spirits, my grief would have been nothing in comparison to what I then felt. Just think about what he's saying here, how difficult it is for him. And he says, now it goes with all those tender feelings riven by which I was endeared to a father's love. I must still live subjected to the deprivation of paternal care. The deprivation of paternal care. He can't care for his children. And to the chains and wrongs of slavery, and yet be dead to the pleasure of a father, from whose heart the impression of its early innocence and love will never be effaced. Thus passed my child from my presence. It was my own child. I loved it with all the fondness of a father. But things were so ordered that I could only say farewell and leave it to pass in its chains while I looked for the approach of another gang, in which my wife was also loaded in chains. My eye soon caught her precious face. But gracious heavens, that glance of agony, may God spare me from ever enduring again. My wife, under the influence of her feelings, jumped aside, and I seized hold of her hand, while my mind felt unutterable things, and my tongue was only able to say, "We shall meet in heaven." Just think about how difficult this was. Think about the challenges that Black families experienced for hundreds of years in the United States. And think about what the impact must have been on our families, on the way that we interact with each other. I can only imagine what his experience was. This was when he decided that he would no longer toil for his enslaver. This was when he decided that he would mail himself. And in mailing himself, know that he would still never see his wife and children again. Think about this. As we celebrate Fathers today and celebrate Juneteenth, think about what it means for Black men, particularly Black men, to have fought to remove their chains. This is a really challenging situation. And I can only imagine that its agony, its pain still lives in my bones based on the things that occurred to those ancestors of mine who faced this pain and this agony. And so as people of African descent joined the war, you should know that the North, under President Abraham Lincoln, was actually losing the Civil War. It isn't until Lincoln finally allows enslaved Africans to fight that the tide of the war is changing. For several reasons. First of all, who else had more to gain by the destruction of enslavement? And also, you have to recognize that those enslaved Africans in the South knew the terrain in some instances better than their enslavers. And it also meant that those people who were part of the Confederate Army now would have to fight on two fronts, because as they marched forward to meet Union armies in other places and fight the war, they knew they'd be leaving their home with enslaved Africans there that knew that if the North won, they would no longer be enslaved. And so they had to think about their homes. As soon as they left, many of those cities burned, because those who were still enslaved, who had not gone to fight in the Union Army, started a major, major rebellion in the South. It is only through the Africans' battle to free themselves that even the United States still exists. That is what happens. And so we should recognize, by the way, this is an image of Robert E. Lee surrendering to Ulysses S. Grant. This happened at the Appomattox Courthouse. This is where we recognize that enslavement will end. And you know that Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which was to go into effect on January 1st, 1863. January 1st, 1863. I want you to know what that means. It was a strategic proclamation, you should know. You should know that that's what this means, because Abraham Lincoln freed those enslaved Africans who were in the states where the management, the government of those states was still against the Union. He didn't free everyone. In fact, there were even some states that were still in the Union that had enslaved Africans. He did not free them in the Emancipation Proclamation. So this is a military stratagem. So as he frees them, this is when the South begins to struggle. This is when this occurs. And you begin to see these sorts of images take place. Look at this emancipation, and you see the enslaved on one side and the slave fight, and Abraham Lincoln on the bottom, who is supposed to be this sort of liberator. I don't view him as such. I don't have time to talk about it in great detail now. I want you to read the book Forced into Glory by that amazing Black historian who is now an ancestor, known as Lerone Bennett Jr. Lerone Bennett, I believe he's an ancestor, Lerone Bennett Jr. And so you'll begin to see some of this contradiction. And some of the contradiction is actually in my book. So I don't know why I mentioned that one first, right? 7 Little White Lies, the conspiracy to destroy the Black self-image. Those ideas are in my book as well. But my book makes an argument, I think, when Lerone Bennett is just giving portions of history. So this is important. I want you to recognize that the actual Emancipation Holiday is a celebration that occurs first in Texas. What city in Texas does it first occur in? Do you know? Let's see if we have some answers. What city in Texas does it occur in? Now, you might have heard that these enslaved Africans that created the Juneteenth celebration did not know that they were considered free for nearly 2.5 years. What city? Do we have some answers?
St. Jason.
St. Jason says what?
Galveston.
Galveston, Texas. Galveston, Texas. So essentially what happens is on January 1st, 1863, these Africans in the South, in these Confederate states, are freed, right? So many of them just begin to escape, or they fight and they do all these sorts of things. You should know, by the way, that in many communities that had free Africans, they had a watch party waiting for January 1st to occur, 1865. They had a big watch party. This is where some of the first New Year's Eve celebrations occurred. Did you know that? That the New Year's Eve celebrations of the United States are uniquely connected to the story of the African. You may not have known that. So on January 1st, 1863, many are freed, but it isn't until June 19th, 1865, that the Union Army reaches into the deep, deep South. And they get to Galveston, Texas, and it is there that General William T. Sherman reads Special Order Number 15. And this is when we are able to acknowledge that these Africans had already been free. Can you imagine what it had been like as an enslaved African who was hearing that you had already been free? We're talking over 200,000 people in Texas who did not know. Imagine what it had been like if during that time you had a family member taken away. Imagine what it would have been like at that time if you had a family member who perished. And then you found out that you had been free for 2.5 years. Imagine what that would have been like. So it is in the reading of this that we actually then begin to see that this new period of freedom will occur. Yes, Anika.
So St. Jason says that his great-grandparents were enslaved at Levi Jordan Plantation, about 90 miles from Galveston.
Imagine that. Imagine that. So many of us have these bonds that are really close to these stories. We may not always know these stories because there's so many of us who struggled to survive and fought for freedom, whose names we have forgotten. Today, we should not just celebrate, but we should also pour a libation for them.
So Sinet Ishiria says this is not a celebration, it's a relationship with the devil's punch bowl.
You know, she has a turn of phrase, right? Now, listen, those of us think about this day and are sorrowful, right? But I want you to recognize the way that this became a celebration is because we were recognizing that we fought and we won. So yes, the situation was terrible, but we fought and we won. That is why it became a celebration. That's what happens. We're celebrating the fact that we fought and won our freedom, not that we had experienced the horrors of enslavement. And that's what I think we need to recognize. So, by the way, it wasn't Sherman. I misspoke. It wasn't Sherman that read the general order that ends enslavement. He actually creates the order that leads to what we think of as 40 acres and a mule. It is Gordon Granger that actually arrives in Galveston and reads the Emancipation Proclamation through another order. And this is part of what the order says. the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, he's referring to the Emancipation Proclamation, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. Can you imagine that sentence? I'm sure that there were enslaved Africans that said, what? Absolute equality of rights and rights of property? Is that what he just said? And connection heretofore existing between them becomes that of employer and hired labor. In other words, if you're going to stay on this plantation, you must be paid. You must be paid. This is very interesting. And so it is this date that Gordon Granger's reading of this proclamation, General Order, I can't remember the number of the order, but this is where we actually see that the celebration of Juneteenth, recognizing June 19th, 1865 occurs. And really almost automatically this celebration occurs. Sometimes it's called the Jubilee celebration, the Emancipation celebration, and finally it is called Juneteenth. Look at these men here standing so proudly. They are saying, I fought for our freedom. A major part of these celebrations was celebrating those soldiers. Why? Because it is not a celebration of Abraham Lincoln. It's a celebration of the Africans who fought and won our freedom. We must recognize it in that manner so we can give honor and power to our ancestors. Take a look at this image of Harriet Smith. She was a formerly enslaved person near Austin, Texas. And when this picture is taken, she's about 87 years old. We're going to hear her words as she talks about seeing those colored soldiers come. This was actually recorded, obviously you can tell when she was much older, and it is now part of the United States archives. It was done during the WPA, the workers, the governmental policy that put people during the Depression to work. And so one of the things they did is they began recording those people who had been previously enslaved. This is the opportunity to hear the voice of those people. And this is our ancestor, Harriet Smith, talking about what that experience was. That did not play. Didn't play. Oh well. I want you to now look at images from these celebrations. Look at these children here, enjoying themselves, eating some watermelon, just enjoying themselves. Dressed in their Sunday best, by the way. Were you gonna say something?
Just thinking how ironic watermelon.
Well, watermelon is a major, by the way, did you know that watermelon was actually something that the ancient Kemetic people enjoyed? Watermelon is one of those fruits that has a high water content, and we ate it considerably. It's one of the things that helped us survive. So while folks would like to paint us with stereotypes, that's fine. Let them say that foolishness that they will. We know that we took every advantage we could, so that we could survive. Then you're also seeing that they often had all of these carts that had been festooned with white roses, white flowers, really, to celebrate the freedom of people of African descent. Take a look at that. And this is an image of the Juneteenth celebration that has gone down Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. This street right here is Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. The next street over here, this is, Anika can recognize it. That's actually, it goes down 125th Street. They're crossing Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. That Citibank right there is Anika's bank. That's her bank right there. Can you tell? This is like literally 6 blocks from our house. And this year is going to be its 29th celebration. I know we're in New York and not in Texas. You should know that Black folks have been celebrating this for a long time. They weren't waiting for no Joe Biden to sign any proclamation. We've been celebrating this for a long time. And so this is really important. My fraternity alone in New York City, I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. My fraternity, my chapter is in Brooklyn. You should know that we've had a Juneteenth dinner for at least the last 14 or 15 years. So Black folks have been celebrating this for a very long time, and it's extremely important. Take a look at this drawing of this celebration. Do you notice that the man leading the celebration here is wearing a Union soldier cap? And who's behind him? Tiny children who are also wearing Union soldier caps. So he's saying, we fought for freedom, you must fight for freedom. You must fight for freedom. Very important. And as I say that we fought and destroyed our chains, let me phrase it this way. I want you to remember this incredible quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. He says, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. In other words, it may take some time for you to get there, but continue to strive. You will find justice. We know that one of the phrases for justice in our tradition is Ma'at. This comes from the Gospel Messenger in 1958. Well, Martin Luther King was not the only one to have this sentiment. Take a look at what Ptahhotep says. You will actually recognize that there are great similarities in these comments. He says, great is justice, lasting in effect, unchallenged since the time of Asar. One punishes the transgressor of laws, though the greedy overlooks this. Baseness may seize riches, yet crime never lands its wares. In the end, it is justice, Ma'at, that lasts. Everyone says it is my father's ground. In other words, justice is Ma'at, and Ma'at is eternal. But if you see evil, recognize that sometimes it may look like evil is winning. This is of critical importance. There's a question.
Yes, so Senator John wanted to know if it's true that the Catholics created Father's Day, and where does the whole idea of Father's Day come from?
I have never heard that Catholics created Father's Day. I've never heard that. You should know that there were celebrations of Father's Day in the ancient world. The day that fathers were celebrated on, for example, in Kemet, is actually during the ceremonies to Asar. So that there were days during that feast of Asar that you would celebrate fathers. I think you're asking about the modern Father's Day celebration. I'm not aware that Catholics created it, but I think that we should do, and I'm not prepared to talk about it now just because I need to do a little bit of research, but definitely we'll talk more about it. We should ensure that we recognize that any day that we are reminded to say dua, to give divine thanks to those men who assisted us in becoming who we are, should be something that we should celebrate, particularly when we think about the challenges that our people have faced in our families, with maintaining the integrity of families, with recognizing familial and even parental bonds. This has been a real difficult situation. And so I truly hope that you will celebrate the men around you who allowed you to be who you are. So with that, let me say, please remember to pour libation. Please remember to say dua, to say thanks. Please remember to give love and myrrh. Please remember to celebrate fathers while we celebrate our victory, the victory that has led to our freedom. Both of these celebrations occur today, Father's Day and Juneteenth. And I'm truly honored that you've taken some time to spend this day with us. But please don't forget its importance as you move about today. With that, I say the divine force in me greets the divine force in you. Dua. We'll see you soon. Anika, can you come forward with the final affirmation?
Sure. So just a reminder to everyone that we will be celebrating the summer solstice on Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the Tekken in Central Park, which is right behind the Metropolitan Museum of Arts, through the Graywack Archway. So hopefully we will see you. That's closest to 79th Street and 5th Avenue. So
Mhm.
if you come to the park, you'll be passing by the Three Bears statue, and you keep walking until you get to the archway, and
Mhm.
you make a right, and you will see that great Tekken.
Right. And if you've
That
never
was-
been there, if you ask for the obelisk, unfortunately,
Mhm.
or Cleopatra's Needle, someone will direct you.
Yes. I wanted to recognize several people who made donations today. So Tuau to send Matt Smith, send Jenna Khan, send Shane Thomas, and send Fad Hill for your donations. We really appreciate you.
Oh,
And
Fad
all
Hill's
of-
on. Fad Hill's one of our full members as well.
Yes.
Akin Ma'at to you and happy Father's Day.
And all
Happy
of,
Juneteenth.
all of you who have made donations via stars on Facebook, we truly appreciate that as well. And you can continue to make those donations even after the broadcast. You can go ahead and make those donations through Cash App using Shrine of Ma'ats as the
handle.
The handle.
Mhm.
Or you can do it through PayPal and send it through the email ma'at@shrineofma'at.org. So we really do appreciate you. It helped us get our new camera.
Mhm.
That seems to be moving every 5 minutes.
Did you see it moving over there?
Yes.
Did it
it's
look
moving
strange? Did it look good?
It's moving a lot.
Oh.
Every time you move, it's shifting. So I'm sure
Yeah.
it's shifting right now as I move. But Tuau, that really helps us upgrade our technology. So we really appreciate you. And hopefully we will see you on Tuesday. If you're not able to be there physically, it will be streamed on both Facebook and YouTube. So no matter where you are in the world, you will be able to participate in that celebration. So without further ado, I'd like to end with one of the oldest prayers that we have found in the Pertem Heru and Ger, also known as the Book of Coming Forth by Day and Tonight, known as the Amasu. So if you could stand in the pose of adoration and repeat after me in the language of our ancestors, and then we will say it in English. Amasu en Pater,
Amasu and Panter.
Sauksu,
Sauksu.
Ementra,
Ementra.
en Pater,
And Panter.
Autu,
Autu.
Aura,
Aura.
Maketipa,
Maketipa.
Harura.
Herura.
Give yourself to the One Most High. Keep yourself daily for the divine, and do it tomorrow just as you did it today. Twelve Winter.
Twelve winter.
Thank you to Divine, and thank you to all of you.
Go ahead and have a wonderful Sunday. We'll
Yes.
see you soon.
Happy Father's Day
Happy Father's
Happy
Day and happy Juneteenth.
and happy solstice.
Shemin Ma'at. Go forward in divine balance. We will see you all very, very soon.